to me, it seems to be more about the running game than the
Yeah, I was
pass.
going to get that. I have that comment here too if you want me to read it.
Yeah, you can read it if you
Yeah,
want.
you've seen a lot of teams that have done things where they're reading pure progressions to handle all the junk that is being thrown at you by the defense. This version of the run game is kind of in that mix as well. It's the run game version of it. There's a lot of junk being thrown at you. This handles a lot of it. That's what Nick said.
Yeah, they did. They had a lot of junk, for lack of a better word, thrown at them in the running game last year. I mean, a lot, and they didn't handle it well. And I think that's where this all. Now that I've gotten further clarification, I think this all has to do. The perception is this is all about the passing game. I think it's about the running game because that's the strength of the team. Um, And look, they're somewhat limited from a passing perspective. We all know the reasons. Whether I don't want to go down that route today because we have shows where we can talk about that for 2 hours. But I think the perception around the league, the perception for everybody is this about getting the passing game up to the speed where people think it should be because of the talent they have. I think it's about the running game because what they were built on the run, not only when they won the Super Bowl, but really since 2021. They've had a top 5, top 10 running game at worst, and obviously a historic running game when they won the Super Bowl. So it's not like it's about getting back to the historic version, but you got to get back to that top 5, top 10 at worst rushing offense. And if you don't do that, you're not going to have a good offense because you don't have a high volume thrower. And that's not picking on Jalen Hurts. That's just the reality of the situation. And by the way, it's hard for anybody to just win consistently with no running game. But the Eagles, the key to their entire success during this era has been the effectiveness of the running game. And they need to get back to that point. And they got so much junk thrown at them in the running game, run blitzes, negative plays. How many negative plays do we have? We always talk about it. And then all of a sudden they're behind the sticks. That's all Kevin Patullo talked about last year. It's all he talked about. And I know people don't want to hear that name, but that was the problem. All the negative plays. And there's some, false starts, there's penalties, but throw the penalties out of it. It's mainly the running game. And that put them behind the sticks too often. And that's what Nick was talking about with all the junk that was thrown at them. And they didn't handle it well. And they believe this system, the Mike McDaniel, that's why they wanted Mike McDaniel so badly. They believe that is more capable of handling all that junkiness. And we're going to see.
And why didn't they handle it, John? I mean, was it because they didn't have the answer? Was it because their scheme didn't work against it? What in your estimation is why they couldn't figure out how to handle some of that junk?
Well, I think they had so much success doing it one way for so long. They were like, we'll figure it out. And then when they did change, they got a little bit more successful. And I think that's what, Nick's ears kind of perked up and said, all right, we're better doing it this way now. But we don't have the expertise in it. And we got to find more people who have expertise running this type of running scheme. And that's when they shifted. But yeah, they were really bad. They came back and rightfully so. I look, if you went into last season and gave me a list of 100 things that would go wrong, I wouldn't have put running game can't figure out the adjustments against them on it. I wouldn't literally in the top 100. I wouldn't have put it on there. So just because of how good the offensive line is and how good the running back is, I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have bothered me at all. So I don't even blame them for being taken by surprise by it, to be honest. But you have to give the opponents credit. Once they get a blueprint, everybody copies it in this league. They started all this havoc creation. All the negative plays started piling up, and they did shift in season, and they got better. And what they shifted to is what they want to do now with the under center stuff and the more options for Saquon Barkley. And then they got a little bit better, not to where they wanted to be, but a little bit better down the second half of the season. And they want to build on that.
Isn't it fair, John, to wonder if that's coaching? I mean, I know, and I think one of the themes of our show, one of the things that people know about our show is that you are a player's first guy, which I appreciate. I think is a good way to look at the game. But isn't specifically what you're talking about coaching? Like precisely, isn't that what the coaches do? When you're getting thrown junk, as you worded it in the run game, which I'll ask you to elaborate on as well. Isn't that what the coaches are supposed to do? I'm not saying the coaches are going to go out there and have a bigger impact than the players, because you've won me over on that. I agree with you. But I do believe that coaches do impact a team and can get more out of a team and can make adjustments when they see something going wrong or not working. Do you think the Eagles coaching staff came up short in that department last year, or was it just how it went? How do you see that?
Well, I think they did change and they did adjust and they did get better. So I think the coaches deserve credit for that. But that's also where the disconnect with Jeff Stoutland started. So because Nick kind of stuck his head in and said, look, we got to do it a different way. This isn't working. And that's where the whole disconnect started there. So, again, when you have success one way for such a long period of time and somebody figures something out, it's really difficult to move off of it, So I actually give Nick a lot of credit for moving off of it. The question is, was it because of what the defense is doing? That's the key question to me. Was it because of what the defense was doing, or because of Lane was injured for obviously the second half, but before that, Landon was a shell of himself. Cam was a shell of himself. Like, I think it still had more to do with the players. Like, they could have thrown 100% Landon Dickerson, which you probably never had. So whatever he was at the height here in Philadelphia.
I don't know that he got above 60%, 70% last year.
Yeah, last year. But I mean, even in his Pro Bowl years, he's always been banged up because, he's had significant injuries dating back to Florida State.
Yeah.
Never mind Alabama. So whatever his height optimal health was here in Philadelphia, if you had that guy, and he had Cam Jurgens from the year before the back injury, and Lane was healthy for 17 games playing at Hall of Fame level as he typically does, I don't think it's as bad. I don't think it's as bad as it was. In other words, I think the bigger issue was the health of the players, not the scheme. However, they did get better when they shifted the scheme, and they went more under center. They did objectively get better. Saquon at one point was averaging 3.4 yards per carry.
Yeah, and it did pick up. He had those couple games of 100 plus. Yeah, he did. Yeah. I don't think it got better to the point where you wanted it to, but it did get a little.
No, it did. It didn't get better to the point where you wanted it to, but it got better. So I do think the coaches did their job from that perspective, or at least Nick, because he was the one who kind of stuck his head in. And look, when you've done it for as long as Stout, and you've done it as successfully as Stout, that's probably tough to take.
Yeah, I've been hearing from, we had and Cilio had Adam Kaplan on and stuff, and it seems to be coming out that Jeff Stoutland got really emotional at the end, and maybe that got in the way, And you talked about this yesterday on the show, where you mentioned that, Nick basically poked his head in the room, and Jeff didn't like it.
Yeah,
So
basically. And and I love Stout, and he knows
yeah,
that.
but you got come on, Stout. I mean, you got
He's the head coach of the football team.
I know.
It's his right to do it. So, and that's not a popular position to take in this town. But yeah, I'm, Nick didn't do anything wrong.
Well,
Stout,
maybe look, it's fair to wonder maybe the ego of Stout. I mean, look, I love Stout. I don't want to make it seem like Stout's not an awesome, coach and a big part of our history, but the guy's legend has grown quite a bit, John, in the last
oh
5
yeah, you don't